If you've been going around the good old internet looking for the right podcast to fulfill your New York Yankees needs, well, I'll be the first to deliver the good news to you. You have found it. Here on Yapping Yankees with me, your host, Mike Scudero, you and I will be discussing the latest news, takes, and talk throughout the entire Yankee universe. Oh, and there may be some ranting on my behalf. Yeah. Anyway, what do you say we get to it? Let's get to yapping! Well, hello there, my fellow Yankee fans, and welcome to episode 234 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. As always, I am your host, Mike Scudero, your friendly neighborhood Yankee yapper with the best yap in all the land here on September the 8th of the year 2024. Yet another extra large order of the Yappuccino for you. Yes, thank you very much. Oh my gosh. Happy Sunday once again, my friends. It is September 8th. Wow.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Getting decently into the final month of the baseball season. Today was the opening game of the football season for many teams, including my own team, the New York Giants, who are just nothing short of a tragedy at this point. And I mean, what do you want from me? It's true. But right now, I'm still mainly focused on baseball. Obviously, baseball has my main focus until the very moment that it is over, no matter when that is, whether it's after the regular season like last year or after the playoffs, most likely this year, given the position the Yankees are in. But I do hope that you all still managed to have a good weekend. I actually very much enjoyed mine because a matter of just maybe, I don't know, about an hour and a half ago from the time that I started recording just now, I just returned from a lovely weekend in the Hamptons with my amazing girlfriend, Victoria. Had a great time out there. It was very nice. Yesterday, there was a bit of rain, just a little bit of mist, at least on the east end of the island. Where I live, the rain was a bit worse, but it was just a little bit of a mist out there on Saturday, a little bit of weird weather. But for the last couple of weeks here in New York, especially the last week or so, the weather's been very nice, and we're getting ready to have another very nice weather week this coming week. Even today is gorgeous out. We spent plenty of time outside when we were still out there before coming home today, and even right now as I'm recording, my window to my room is open, letting some beautiful fresh air, and it could be maybe about 5 or 10 degrees warmer for me because you guys all know out there, especially the ones who know me well, know that I'm a psycho for the heat. So I definitely could afford to have it a little bit warmer here, but I will still take the little to no clouds in the sky at all with a nice little breeze rolling through. And especially enjoying today with the weather the way it was, the final day out there after a nice relaxing weekend. It was just awesome. So had a nice weekend, ready to refresh, get ready for the week coming up, and I hope it was the same for you guys. I still did manage to, at least to a degree, keep up with the Yankees, obviously, because I don't want to take too much time away from my girlfriend, but I don't want to completely disconnect from the Yankees either because, well, unhealthy attachment, and I have a podcast to do today, so still kept track of what was going on over the weekend, and still have plenty to talk about today, but did have a very nice weekend on a personal level, and I hope the same for you. But I did get home about a half an hour after the game ended today, this afternoon, and now about a half hour after the game ending, here I am recording in the early 5 o'clock hour for Yapping Yankees. So, pretty event-filled week, I think it's safe to say, my friends. The piss-poor gameplay against losing teams continued in the earlier part of it, and despite the last couple of days going well before today, thanks to some great pitching, well, today was very frustrating because of an unfortunate continuation of a complete and utter lack of offense, more or less. And it led to what was an unfortunate loss when the Yankees could have had a nice sweep in Chicago against the Cubs. Overall, not the best team if you look at them over the scope of the entire season, but they were hitting very well coming into this series and were playing some pretty respectable baseball. And the Yankees tamed them a bit, especially with their pitching, like I said, in the last couple of days. But the offense had been quiet all throughout, but they couldn't sneak a third consecutive quiet offense victory past them today. And they unfortunately ended up losing, not finishing the sweep. I am happy they still won the series, especially because that has been slim pickings of late in the series-winning department for the Yankees, especially against bad teams, which is all the more irritating, like we spoke a bunch about last week in the overall theme of them losing to bad teams and not getting on a roll and not being able to get consecutive wins together and then keep it going after that, which is still an issue even today, a week later, after what they did against the Rangers and then losing today after a nice first 2 games against the Cubs. But also because the Orioles lost today. Like, it was nice. They actually lost a weekend series to the Tampa Bay Rays, which I didn't expect to happen. They lost today, they lost yesterday, and the Yankees took advantage yesterday, but not today. They could have had a 1.5 game lead after action was completed today, but instead the Yankees still have a half a game lead. So just about at the exact same level as we were when we spoke last week, which seems to be the dynamic each and every week, more or less the same picture atop the American League East in this never-ending gridlocked race between the Yankees and the Orioles. And it would have been nice to see the Yankees take advantage of that today, but wasn't to be. So, unfortunately, yes, the continuing theme as of this past week, and especially this weekend. The only time it wasn't an issue this past week was back on Monday against the Rangers. Otherwise, it was really an issue with the offense. Tuesday, they scored 4. All right, whatever. Wednesday, they only scored 2 the entire day because then Stroman sucked and then the bullpen sucked after him. And the offense only mounted together 2 runs until a 9th-inning grand slam by Trent Grisham out of nowhere right down the right field line. So they ended up scoring 6, but 4 of those were in garbage time, per se, at the very end, before an unfortunate very nice catch made on a ball hit by Stanton that I still don't know how it didn't sneak over the wall, but I mean, it's whatever. So Wednesday until the very end there when Trent decided to hit a grand slam, nothing then either. And then this entire weekend against the Cubs, just nothing. 6 runs in 3 games. You had 3 runs on Friday, 2 runs yesterday, and 1 today. So just tacking a run off by the day here against the Cubs, and they couldn't sneak one by them today with a low-scoring victory. And it's even more unfortunate because the birthday boy, Garrett Cole, today, the Yankee ace, it was his birthday today. But despite going 6 innings and at least in the earned run department, no runs allowed. He did allow 2, but they were both unearned thanks to Gleyber Torres' booted error in the bottom of the first. But despite those amazing efforts, 6 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, terrific outing, but unfortunately nothing to show for it except for a completely undeserved loss. So he's 6-4 with yet another unearned loss to his record. Not that I care about pitcher record for exactly this reason, like I've said a million times, but his numbers have really come down nicely. I mean, his ERA is down to 3.36 overall. He has a 1.58 ERA in his last 7 starts. Like I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, Cole has just looked better and better since he's returned. The more outings he gets, the better he continues to look. He was being very humble in the postgame today, saying, I just didn't make enough good pitches. Yes, you did, Garrett. I know you're trying to be classy. I know you're being a good teammate, but your offense let you the hell down today. It's fine. You did great. I appreciate the trying to be a good teammate. I very much respect that, but the offense just completely screwed you today. It's fine. If you don't want to say it, then I'll say it. So, just unfortunate, but he continues to look better and better and better. It's just a shame the offense didn't have his back today. But again, prevailing theme of this past week, which is why, even more so, after all the discussion that largely engulfed last week's episode with Jason Dominguez, that's why this week it's going to be another important topic yet again, because a kid who can really add to the offensive dynamic here and help to turn things around, possibly add that much-needed spark in the lineup. Well, guys, a week later, on September 8th now, when 3 weeks from today will be the final game of the 2024 season, Jason Dominguez, despite hitting a home run here, driving in runs there, every single day you log on to Twitter or X, you see a new highlight of something Jason Dominguez did while rotting away in AAA, still not on the New York Yankees, because according to Brian Cashman, Alex Verdugo gives them the best chance to win. Yeah. Pretty much everyone's reaction, I think, if it's not plunging your head through a cinder block wall. It's just remarkable. It's remarkable what this man can go out there and say with a straight face and even remotely believe it to be true. That's just the words of somebody who truly feels and probably even knows that there is no danger in his job security. Because if it was someone who cared about their job security and someone who cared about actually telling the truth and not just telling falsehoods and gaslighting the public and insulting everybody's intelligence, they wouldn't be saying something this blasphemous, because it's just not true. I understand, because I'm not 5 years old, I understand the difference in talent from AAA to the major leagues. But I also know what Jason Dominguez, yes, in a very short time, was able to do when we saw him last year, in that short window of time. And I also know what he continues to do in AAA while continuing to not get deserved playing time up here. And I also know what Alex Verdugo has continued to do. Guy gets a hit maybe every couple of days, which only further feeds the Yankees' delusion that he actually is a key to winning. So it's actually kind of detrimental in that sense if you think about it that way. Not in the sense that it might help the Yankees. I want the Yankees to win, and anything that helps them win, I am on board for. But when it comes to something as blatant as who should be up here and who is the better option, especially long-term, which could be benefited by additional experience immediately in the here and now, every Yankee fan in existence out there with even a quarter of a functioning brain within their head knows who should be playing left field for the Yankees right now. And the more that this continues to go on, as I said before, especially in a time period where the Yankees are having a lot of offensive difficulties, the more of an irresponsibility you are fulfilling to the Yankees by keeping someone who could help things along in a place where they are not of any benefit because you feel like playing a guy who is factually worse. You want to stick to that edgy and unforeseen trade you made with Boston in the offseason. Trading for a guy who might turn out to be something with the Yankees, especially in Yankee Stadium with the right field short porch, somebody who didn't get along with their manager anymore, somebody who was controversial. Because God forbid, Brian, you throw in the towel on somebody that you traded for this past offseason and you maybe admit that, maybe I'm wrong about my thought. Maybe I should bring up the young phenom who could really have a great chance at benefiting this team both in the future and especially now with more accumulated experience and possibly even more so for the future because of what he could possibly experience right now. But the arrogant GM admitting that he and his brain trust are wrong? You have a better chance at me hitting lotto this week, my friends. It's not going to happen. Damn is right. At least not right now. Maybe some point soon, maybe even later in the week. Who knows? But I'm not holding my breath. There is no remaining reason for this to continue to go on. Even the rookie eligibility crap from last week that we spoke about. If you want to listen to all that, listen back to last week. I went through all the mathematics for the amount of at-bats and the amount of games left that could have him pass rookie eligibility in the arena of manipulating service time and losing a year of control and losing that potential draft pick going forward by not allowing him to compete for the Rookie of the Year award next year if he loses his rookie eligibility by surpassing 130 at-bats for the remainder of this year. At this point, given the day and the amount of games remaining, and the amount of at-bats that he could possibly have up until the end, it's virtually impossible for him to now surpass those remaining 95 at-bats that he needs to reach 130 at-bats, which would then strip him of his rookie eligibility. So there are legitimately zero remaining valid and sensible reasons as to why Jason Dominguez is not up here yet. No reasons remain. So now the Yankees, because they're going to stick to their guns and never admit when they're wrong, particularly Brian Cashman, they now have to go out there and straight up insult the intelligence of the entire general populace and say, with a straight face, that Alex Verdugo gives them the best chance at winning. Oh, yes, silly me, the guy who gets maybe a hit or two every couple of days, maybe, if that. The guy who damn near gets doubled off at first base on a routine fly ball to center field. The guy who seldom ever runs his heart out down to first base or around the bases in general. Like yesterday, I can't believe there just wasn't a complete admittance again of just sheer laziness like he did weeks ago with that other play when he was like, oh, I just got a little lazy with the bunt attempt. Remember that? When in the postgame he just blatantly admitted to being a little lazy there. What was that Gleyber Torres fly ball to center field play when you almost got doubled up at first? It had to be replayed and reviewed and overturned. What's the excuse there for almost getting doubled up, with the exception of maybe an inch or two on a routine fly ball to center field? Or maybe grounding out to the right side of the infield, second base in particular, for well over 100 times now in this season alone. Yes, that is not an exaggerated number. Look it up if you do not believe me. He's actually, with the amount of games left, definitely going to break the single-season record since the StatCast era began about 10 years ago for Yankee hitters grounding out to the right side of the infield in 1 year. He is about to break that. And maybe how his numbers have looked since, the first week of June, or even in the last week, with an OPS under 640. I mean, come on, man. We're really saying that this guy's the best chance at winning just because every couple of days he might have a hit or two, like a single? Bro does not have any humongous impact on the field whatsoever. Like, just when you think the Yankees cannot get any lower with blatantly insulting the intelligence of the general public, and I know there are a lot of people out there who are not the sharpest tools in the shed. Hell, even I'm not some of the time. That's completely fair and normal. But, I mean, do you really think that we are this stupid? It's just insulting. But, I mean, we'll get into this even more later because I have a lot more to say on this. But it was a relevant point to bring up for at least a little bit because the offense has been having a tough time. They have been scuffling because, especially, unfortunately, it's a continued discussion from last week as well, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. And Soto's had his games where he'll do better than others of late. Like, he'll be on and off. But generally, especially in the case of Aaron Judge, unfortunately, those two collectively have continued to really struggle the last couple of weeks. It was only about a week to a week and a half when we spoke last week, but now after another week has passed and the struggles are ongoing, it's getting a little hairy now. And we were talking about last week that the problem with this is that, especially in the case of Judge individually because he is the captain, but it largely extends to him and Soto together because they are the powerhouses of the team, of the offense in particularly. But where they go, the lineup goes. And you've seen a lot of that of late. That is in fact true. I mean, Soto in the last week, again, because of the games where he'll sprinkle in some good production every now and again, he'll be better. Like in this past week, he's 7 for 25. He's batting .280, so it's not bad because he has had his games where he's really bad and he's had his games where he's really good. But on an overall basis, it's still nothing crazy, and for him, it could be considered struggling. Like in the last 15 games, that extends the last couple of weeks, you could see he was batting .228, 13 for 57. So while he was hitting home runs, and he's hit 10 home runs in his last 30 games, yeah, the power's been there. But overall, there have been a lot of spots where Soto just has not quite been Juan Soto. And then you pair that with Aaron Judge, who, despite driving in a couple of RBIs this past week, reaching 125 RBIs now in his season, he has still not hit a home run in give or take 2 weeks. And this past week, he has been 4 for his last 26, which is a 154 average. And in his last couple of weeks, since his slump really started about 15 games ago, give or take, he's 11 for his last 53, which is a 208 average. So in the last 2 to 2.5 weeks, that's really when you've been seeing Judge take a steep dive, which is not good for the team, obviously, because, again, on an individual basis, because he is the captain, what he does, generally, they will do. And that has been very true. And with Soto joining that, more or less, in the last couple of weeks, more so than not, I would say, then it's not going to have a good outcome on the remainder of the team. I mean, even Judge's OPS is barely above 500, just 500 in his last week of gameplay. On the season, his OPS, because how ridiculously he's done otherwise, is still at 1150, which is still just dumb. But in the last couple of weeks, it's gotten rough for him. And I'm not worried about him. I do think that he's going to hit another tear at some point before the end of the season and possibly even take that into the postseason, which would be epic and vital for the Yankees, to say the least, obviously. 60 home runs is starting to become a little doubtful now because the Yankees are 82 and 61, which puts them at 143 games played, which leaves them with 19 games remaining. he would have to hit 9 home runs in 19 games, which is not impossible by any means, especially because Judge is one to hit homers in bunches at times. So if he hits another massive bunch coming up, which he is definitely due for, considering he has not hit a home run in about 2 weeks now, since that week that he hit 7 in 1 week. But since he is very much due for that, it could very well happen. But I mean, even with numbers even remotely close to the way they are now, anybody on the face of the earth would sign up for a season like this right here and now for it to end at this very moment. But for the sake of hitting 60 home runs and it being that special happening for the second time in his amazing career, that's starting to look a little doubtful. But even more so than the importance of these 60 home runs, the utmost of importance lies in just rediscovering his overall hitting abilities, because the Yankee offense has been suffering without it. Now, it is on the other players to a degree to still figure it out without their captain, because Judge can't be amazing for all 162. Nobody can. But they do, to a degree, go where Judge goes, and they have felt the sting of that. And I don't want to be too hard on them at all, because Soto and Judge have done what they have done for the vast majority of the season, and they deserve all the praise in the world for that. But it is also not wrong to validly point out, because it is what's going on. You got to be as balanced as possible and report the facts if you do any sort of content regarding the team. And in the interest of fairness, you do have to be honest and say that no matter how much you love them and no matter what they've done this season, how amazing they've been, the last couple of weeks, especially for Judge, have been ugly. And they got to figure it out, because the Yankees are in too important of a race right now to maintain not only first place in the American League East, but thereby what is likely to be the best record in the American League and could get them a first-round bye if they maintain that, which at this very moment they still have, like they did last week when we last spoke. That's why I don't want to go too in on the Yankees, even if it sounds like I'm being glass half empty with any sort of subject I hit on today. It is still important to remain positive in the sense that they do still have the best record in the American League. They do. By a half a game only, right now, over the Guardians, as they haven't completed gameplay yet against the Dodgers, and the Orioles. Although right now the Guardians are losing 3-0 to the Dodgers in the 8th inning at the time I'm recording right now. The game is definitely over for them by the time you're listening to this, but at the time I'm taping, they're down 3-0. If they lose, then there'll be a whole game worse than the Yankees, with the Orioles being a half a game worse. So the Yankees still have the best record in the American League, and I'd like for it to stay that way, because a first-round bye would be nice just to reset the team. And I do know some people have worries about a team resting for too long and then being cold when they pick up gameplay and getting eliminated early. Could happen, yeah. I mean, nothing's impossible. But I'd rather the team be fresh. I would. And I know in the grand scheme of a World Series it doesn't, but in general, finishing with the best record in your league does have a certain degree of credibility and stature to it. You like it. Who doesn't want to be referred to as the best team in their respective league? So I want the Yankees to hold on to that, and there's a good chance that they will, so long as they finish in first in the East, which is why it is so important you take advantage on days like today, where the Orioles continue to not play their best brand of baseball, with their offense taking a snoozer the last couple of days, the entire weekend against the Rays, as a matter of fact, like the Yankees did. But they did too, because even on the day that they won on Friday, they only scored 2 runs. So you got to take advantage as the Orioles continue to not play their best baseball. The Yankees are still advantageous right now because they are over them, but you got to keep going. And a part of keeping going with that, like we were talking about last week, is to keep it going and capitalize on some nice wins you get and get yourselves on a streak. Find consistency, get your offense right, and hey, don't self-sabotage with certain decisions that should or shouldn't be happening that you may or may not be doing. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that. All of these things together are keys to make sure you maintain your current position with the best record in your league right now. Another part of that is getting Judge and Soto right. That's part of the offensive category. As far as everybody else, you still got Gleyber Torres in the leadoff spot, speaking of the top of the lineup. You got Gleyber Torres still not being bad up there, still having a pretty decent time in the leadoff spot offensively. I mean, in the last week, he's continuing to stay hot. He's 10 for his last 28, good for a .357 average. And in the last 2 weeks, 19 for 61. That's a 311 average. And in that time, he's got almost an 800 OPS, which he does have over in the last week. Yeah, that's right. His OPS in the last week is 870. It's pretty freaking good. So if Gleyber can keep that up, then again, like I said last week, no matter what my opinion was, or kind of still is because I just don't trust him going down the line, especially in vital situations. But if he's going to keep doing this in the leadoff spot, then don't throw anything off in that sense. Just keep it the way it is. Still got his doubts with defense. I mean, he has been playing better defense at second base overall of late, but he still has a play like today where he boots one. I know he was caught in a tough in-between, as Aaron Boone likes to put it, with over-explaining and word salad in something that really isn't all that complicated. Much more simplified in the postgame by Todd Frazier and many others. But certain things that Gleyber still has habits of doing that makes me feel a little uneasy about him. But I do have to be fair and also say that with the bat, in that leadoff spot for a few weeks now, about 3-4 weeks, he has done pretty well. 3 weeks or so in particular. Very, very good job there. And he has played a bit better of defense of late. A bit better. Wells, while he had a bit of a tougher day at the plate, even though he really got a hold of a couple, especially that later hit screamer to left field and Ian Happ making a nice play against the ivy and the brick wall behind it. I don't know how he made that play, but still, Wells, I mean, my confidence in him has not faded. Had a bit of a tough last week overall because he only hit .214, being 6 for his last 28. But he's still gotten a hold of a few balls really well, ones that just got bad results. And Wells has been a victim of that for a chunk of this year, as we know, especially when he wasn't getting as much consistent playing time earlier on in the year. He would hit balls really hard, and they just would not fall and get the result that he was looking for. But because of those occasional shows of power still, his slug and overall OPS is still pretty solid because of it, even in this last week where the results didn't show the way you would probably like them to. But I'm still sticking with Wells, man. And even in yesterday's game, really got to show off that cannon of his behind the plate, throwing out 2 base runners attempting to steal at second base, and by a long shot, just darts down to second base. I freaking love that. Because at times, Wells would leave a little bit to be desired defensively, but especially on these days where he shows more and more improvement there, that only makes his stock even higher. And sticking with him being the more frequent catcher behind the plate, because at this point, unfortunately for him, I think somebody could get a ball down to second base or even third base faster than Trevino if they use their feet. I mean, it's unfortunately just gotten that slow. And as far as Trevino, I mean, listen, he's going to be put out there sometimes if it's a day game following a night game. Sometimes even the Yankees don't even do that, which is a good thing because Wells should be catching more. But I understand that because of that or maybe a doubleheader, you're still going to see Trevino out there every now and again. But especially if the defense just continues to not be there quite as much, especially with the throwing down the bases and whatnot, the offense not being there has rendered him almost completely useless at this point. It's very sad because with the glove and with blocking balls back there and everything, Trevino is still valuable. But when that's not happening, and there are times where that happens because inevitably it happens to everybody, nobody's perfect. But when that happens, Trevino is legitimately useless at this point. He doesn't hit anyone or anything, and that's why Wells should just be the guy. He just should be. And he has been of late. So keep that up. That's all I could really say. Stanton, with the exception of occasional flashes of power, which is the usual with him. As of this past week, he hit his 25th home run of the season, which is pretty solid considering how much time he missed, which begs the question and makes you wonder what he would do with a full season under his belt like he had in 2021, like we've all fantasized about and know that he could do, but his injuries prevent this. But nonetheless, in hitting his 25th home run, he did accomplish something pretty cool for his entire career at large. This 25th home run made it so that it was his 10th year in his career that he has 25 or more home runs, and he's the only active player to do that. So that's very cool. He had multiple seasons where he had finished 1 or 2 home runs short of 25, so he very well could have had many more seasons with 25 or more. But nonetheless, it's just another great accolade to add on to the career of Giancarlo Stanton, because we all know that no matter how you feel about him or how much he bothers you with his streakiness or his injuries and whatnot, his power cannot be questioned. That's for damn sure. And you see that again right now, because 10 seasons with 25 or more home runs, as much as some people may take that for granted, that's not easy to do, guys. And there's a reason he's the only active player to currently have that. It's not an easy feat to pull off. It's not. I mean, he's even had a bunch of seasons where he eclipses 30 home runs. He's got 7 of those, and this season's not over yet, so that could end up being even 8. He's only 5 home runs away from that, and we got 19 games left. So, still, a remarkable accomplishment for Stanton, and I do congratulate him on that. I do have to say, however, though, as far as recency, since Monday, he has not hit a home run, so the power has not been there quite as much, and in the last week, he has been 4 for his last 26, which is a 154 average, similarly to Aaron Judge in that regard. And even in the last couple of weeks, he's batting 204. He's 11 for his last 54. The power has been there every now and again. It comes in spurts like we all know Stanton does overall with his overall streakiness. But as far as consistently putting it together, as is in his nature, unfortunately in the last week, it has not compiled to much success. So Stanton's very important. Like Judge and Soto, he's got to get it together. And I hope that he does this coming week, starting then, because the Yankees need him. And in the last week or two, it just has not really happened for him. As far as a player it still has happened for, how about the Yankees' third baseman, Jazz Chisholm? Now, the growing pains at third base, that's still a concern every single day, I would say, amongst the Yankee fan base. And it's a valid one, because there have been some easier plays that have been botched there, but I mean, it's the guy's first time ever playing third base this year, so you can't really blame him too much. You more so blame the Yankees for continuing to not learn their lesson with playing guys out of position. But nonetheless, at least with the bat, while he still made his good plays down to third, with the bat, he has still remained hot, and in his overall time with the Yankees, he does have his pitches that make you scratch your head sometimes wondering what he's swinging at, like that pitch in the dirt towards the end of today's game, but nobody's perfect again. On an overall basis, though, he has just been made to be a Yankee man at the plate. 9 for his last 28, good for a 321 average. His OPS is well over 700, which is pretty good. On-base percentage, 345 this past week, so about 35% of the time he's reaching base. His slug is hovering around 400, which is solid, considering he has shown to be more of a home run hitter in his short time with the Yankees than almost any other time throughout his career. So that's cool to see. So Jazz is still doing what he's supposed to do. He has still been a very solid pickup. Anthony Rizzo, since returning, again, it's still been good to see him come back, and valid to say, like I said last week, with nothing else really better going on for the Yankees at first base in months, you might as well see what he's got left. And as of this past week, it's been okay. I mean, he's 5 for his last 23, so the quantity of hits really hasn't been there, but he's come through in some nice situations and given the Yankees some scoring chances of late, driven in a few runs this past week. Being 5 for 23 this past week, though, unfortunately, is just a 217 average, so it's still nothing beyond crazy that he's doing. OPS of around 600, so it's not great, but I would say it's still likely that you get something more out of Rizzo than anything else out of first base these last couple of months with Ben Rice and DJ. So, again, slim pickings at first base still when it comes to extreme offensive production, but I would still rather the added defense at first base, even though it's something that we saw, especially earlier on in the year, that's even still shaky with Rizzo, which nobody expected, but still better defense on an overall basis there with him, and obviously because of the resume he's put together his whole career, you hope that he can channel at least a little bit more of that offensive success here in the home stretch here. That's really all you can hope for. But, I don't know, it's still just nice to see Rizzo back down there at first, even though it could be going better offensively. Anthony Volpe, That's just really all I can say. 6 for his last 27, 222 average. No power whatsoever. I mean, his slugging is the same as his average for this past week, which means there's no extra base hits there. On-base percentage is even lower. Struck out 11 times in 27 at-bats. I don't know. The kid just continues to be underwhelming. What can I say? And we're really getting to crunch time here, battling for first place, and the playoffs are right around the corner. I don't know, he just worries me a bit. The week before this past one was better, because in the last 15 games his numbers were better. 15 for 55, 273 average. But still, just not what you expect it to be. It's just not what you expect it to be. So, As far as anybody else on the bench and whatnot, you got Duke Ellis, who basically just comes in for running appearances and did his job again today, in fairness to him, stole another base. You got Oswaldo, who the Yankees still refuse to play. I know with Rizzo having come back and Glaber at second and Jazz at third, I know it's tougher to find playing time for him, but they're just not really finding much of any for him anymore. You got Trent on the bench, being obviously a backup outfielder. He gets his occasional flashes of power, like I said, especially with that Grand Slam appearance in Texas the other night. But he's still just mostly riding the bench. And then you have Alex Verdugo, who I more than expanded on before. I don't get mad at him personally for the Yankees' reluctance to finally just bench him and bring up Dominguez, which is the objectively correct move to do, especially amidst a struggling lineup. I get mad at the Yankees for doing that, for self-sabotaging. And that's really why I wanted to focus on that as sort of a main topic for today outside of big guys like Judge and Soto struggling in the continued offensive difficulties. That's why I wanted to mainly focus on this, because amidst a lineup that's struggling, aside from guys like Soto, Judge, Stanton finding their swing and helping things out themselves, another thing the Yankees could be doing and another key to correcting course, particularly with the lineup, is not self-sabotaging with this idea that Alex Verdugo finally, after everybody we've spoken about in the lineup, we've arrived at him, which is the remainder of what I wanted to really say today and hit on outside of the social media segment today, which, spoiler alert, may or may not have to do with Jason Dominguez. But the self-sabotaging and refusing to admit that Jason Dominguez is a better fit than Alex Verdugo at this time is also hurting this team, because you are costing the Yankees the possibility of getting that much-needed spark and those potentially lethal additional offensive contributions from a young phenom who has been hitting his ass off at AAA of late. I mean, why are we saying that Verdugo is better? What does Verdugo do better outside of just getting a few singles in a week? Which only at this point prolongs his already exhausted stay in this lineup. I need someone out there to explain to me what the reasoning is for continuing on this current course. The guy is no slug. The guy has no OPS. The power's gone. A lefty hitter at Yankee Stadium has no slug. Almost every single at-bat is a ground out to the right side of the infield, especially second base. He almost never runs on anything. Even Michael Kay, who I have to give some crap to right now, even though I've been a big fan of his for years, he's starting to get a little weird of late, especially with this whole Verdugo thing. He crapped on a pretty popular Yankees Twitter account this past week for ragging on the Yankees for continuing to go with Verdugo, saying that, in a 9-game span, he looked good. His average was a bit up. But then, about a day after that or something, within a day's span, I think, if not a couple of days, on the broadcast, when Verdugo basically just walked down to first on another ground ball with the bat in his hand, he goes, I got to tell you, I don't know if there's something wrong with Verdugo's legs or something like that, but he just doesn't run. He hasn't run down to first. You just realized this. Maybe just a day or two after you just crapped on another Yankee fan, very harshly on live radio, might I add, for questioning why Verdugo's out there. Come on, bro. Even the broadcast team is starting to wonder, after all the crap that they had to put out there to the public on the broadcast about why Verdugo is, a great option to have out there in left field right now with Jason Dominguez rotting in AAA. We spoke about it last week when the broadcast team was doing that and how I just didn't want to freaking hear it. Nobody wanted to hear it. If you don't remember what I'm talking about or didn't hear it, then listen back to last week's episode. It's self-sabotage at this point, and it goes along with the overall idea that many times in the past, the Yankees had a blatant decision right in front of them to really help them improve, even potentially in areas where they may be struggling. There's another one right now, and they're continuing to just not do it for reasons that nobody can validly come up with. There are no reasons remaining. Do you want to get down and do the math once again, like we did last week? Do we want to do that? Last week, we took the perspective of how many games there were left, and on average, probably going to hit about 4 times a day or night. 4 times. Sometimes you may go 5, maybe even 6 if the game goes to extras. Sometimes if your offense is completely and utterly dead, Depending on your slot in the lineup, you may only get 3. So I settled in the middle and said, let's say on average 4 at-bats a day with the amount of games that remained last week. Maybe you'd have to give the guy a couple of days off. So maybe because of that, after a whole week passing, by the next Sunday, the 8th, maybe he would be here, since that would basically put an end to that reasoning for him not being here. But the only issue is we have now arrived at the 8th, and he's still not here. Now there are only 19 games left. So if you want to do this, if you want to indulge me for a second, my friends, let's hit up the old calculator. 19 games left. Let's times that by 4, shall we? Oh, look at this. 76 at-bats. How many at-bats, I ask you, my loyal listeners out there, does Jason Dominguez need to eclipse 130 at-bats, which would then strip him of his rookie eligibility? Rookie eligible at-bats have to remain at 130 or less. Otherwise, he loses that eligibility for next year. The service time is not successfully manipulated. The Yankees possibly lose out on that potential draft pick if he is to win the Rookie of the Year, because he will not have a chance to win the Rookie of the Year if he is no longer rookie eligible. So, he has 35 career at-bats right now. So, in order to stay under 130, he would have to hit 95. Do you know what 19 times 4 is? 19 games remaining, on average, 4 at-bats a game. Give me a drum roll, please. That amount of at-bats would be 76. I appreciate you giving me a round of applause for successfully punching numbers into a calculator. But 76 at-bats. Now that, guys, is 19 less than the 95 required to lose his rookie eligibility and reach 130 career at-bats before 2025. So, if you want to go by that, that eliminates that potential reason for holding him back. But if you want to even manipulate the math a little bit and say, Mike, sometimes it could be 5, maybe even 6 at-bats. So let's bump that average number up to 5. So let's say he gets 5 at-bats per game if you played every single remaining game for the last 19. Can you guess how many at-bats that is, guys? That is 95. That brings you to 130 exactly, which would still not violate rookie eligibility, because it says a player shall be considered a rookie unless he has exceeded any of the following thresholds in a previous season: 130 at-bats or 50 innings pitched in the major leagues. If he exceeds 130, so even if he did manage to get 5 at-bats in every single one of the remaining 19 games, which is very, very unlikely to happen, that would still give him exactly 130 at-bats, which would still qualify him for rookie eligibility because it is not exceeding the number 130. And that is probably not going to happen that he gets that many at-bats in every single game, especially if you still even manage to give him a day off at some point, which is unlikely to happen because they keep on saying, we want him to play every single day. Well, even if you did that, and he did get 5 at-bats every single game, it would still be 130, which is still fine. So even if you bump that average number up to 5 every single game, it's still not a valid excuse to keep him down there. So just in an extreme effort to invalidate any sort of horse crap that the Yankees might be tempted to feed you and have you believe, listen to me, my friends, because it is all a bunch of just that horse crap. So if it is service time manipulation, if it is rookie eligibility for the draft pick, or just what have you, losing that extra year of control, it is all garbage at this point. Maybe you had a slight leg to stand on last week if you wanted to believe the Yankees in there, oh, we want to play him every single day when he got here. Well, to not have him at this point, mathematically, that completely eliminates any sort of even the remote leg you might have had to stand on as of last week. If you wanted to play him every single day starting last week, he might have lost his rookie eligibility if you didn't give him a couple of days off. That excuse is now completely eliminated. So maybe we do see something change in the next couple of days. I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath. All I know is that self-sabotage has been a method that the Yankees have unfortunately stuck by in many decisions in recent years, and it appears that they are dedicated to sticking to this one too, because Brian Cashman and his brain trust, we know this, We have hit on this for years on end. They hate to admit when they are wrong. They will come up with anything to tell you that there's this reason or this factor standing in the way of Jason Dominguez having a lane to be a New York Yankee right now. As Brian Cashman has said, no lane for Jason Dominguez. No lane.
Screw you.
Yeah, honestly. No lane. Let me tell you something, my friends. The only thing, or collective group of people, I guess we should say in this scenario, the only collective group of people putting that traffic cone in the middle of the road and preventing said lane from being open for Jason Dominguez is none other than the New York Yankees themselves. It is nothing but self-sabotage at this point, which proves Brian Cashman to be the man that we have always known him to be for years now. And that is, at this point, a blatant, arrogant moron. Because as much as I do like some moves that he has made in the last bunch of years, there are just an overwhelming amount of examples that now lean more towards bad, and certain decision-making in real time, such as this one, which is one of the bigger ones in recent history, I think you could say, where they are just determined to stand in their own way and help a scuffling lineup here in the most vital part of the season, where they're trying to secure first place in the East and thereby likely the best record in the American League, which should get them a very advantageous position in the playoff bracket. It's self-sabotage. Nothing more, nothing less. These people do not want to admit when they're wrong. And why this loyalty exists, I could not tell you, because next year, Alex Verdugo is not under contract here. So it's not like you got to remain loyal to the guy because you got to deal with him for another year. He's probably, I'd say there's a 99% chance that he is not coming back next year. 99 and 9/10% of a chance that he is not a Yankee in 2025. So I, or anybody else, has no clue where this loyalty stems from. Maybe it's because he and Judge are close. I don't know. I'd like to think that Judge, if it's as blatant as this and he knows what would be better for the team, I would like to think he wouldn't stand in the way of that. I'm not there personally, so I cannot assume or presume certain things. I can't. It's not responsible to do so. But I would hope that he is not a factor in this, just because he and Verdugo are tight. But this guy is not going to be here next year, especially because the Yankees like to tout, oh yeah, if he's not up this year, well, you're definitely seeing him next year in 2025. No. Now, right now, in 2024, when it is guaranteed that you have Juan Soto, when Aaron Judge, despite struggling in the last couple of weeks, is still having yet another historic season, when you have your ace back and is fresh after missing the first 3 months of the year, give or take the first half of the year he missed, his arm is fresh and he is looking better and better every time he's out there. When you have all of these factors together, even Stanton's out there right now despite his inconsistencies, but if he gets a hold on, and we know how he could be in October too, with all of these factors together, you do it now in 2024. This next year mentality is why the Yankees don't even have a pennant, let alone a World Series in 15 years. Not even a pennant. And we've spoken many times in that regard with the pennant drought, how that's even approaching historic levels now for the first time ever. The next year crap has to stop. It has to stop. I don't care if Verdugo has an RBI single as the only thing he does inside of 2 or 3 days, and everything else revolves around not running on the bases and striking out or grounding out to the right side of the infield while not running around the bases every single other time. I just don't care enough, especially when they keep on saying what Dominguez is doing down there. Guys, it just continues to be more and more of a tease. Since he returned from his latest injury on August 15th and 91 plate appearances, he's batting .373. 429 on base, .566 slugging. It's almost 1,000 OPS. 995 to be exact. 160 WRC plus, 4 homers. Every other day it feels like right now, if not every single day, it seems like he's hitting a home run and driving in runs and doing this great, doing that great. For the love of God, why are we self-sabotaging? It makes me crazy. You go through difficulties, yeah, it's frustrating, but that's to be expected in a long year. But when you stand in your own way, when you make blatantly wrong decisions, that's what makes me mental. And this makes me mental. That's what's happening with this whole Verdugo situation. I don't get it. I do not understand. The guy's been a good defender out in left field, not enough to justify keeping him over Jason Dominguez, though. The guy has no slug whatsoever, which leads to a piss-poor OPS because he has no power. A lefty Yankee having no slug. It's all singles. One every couple of days, it feels like. If that, that's it. There's nothing good enough to justify this. Give me one reason. One reason. Look at his numbers. Throughout the last, 70 games, look how piss poor they are. Someone give me a reason as to why Dominguez is being held back for this freaking guy. Please. Again, I'm not mad at Verdugo himself. Verdugo is what he is. He's doing what he's done for the vast majority of his career. And if the Yankees keep penciling him in, well, he's just going to go out there and do his job like he's being paid to do. It's the Yankees that are to blame for this. The decision makers in Brian Cashman and his brain trust, who refuse to ever admit when they're wrong. This guy was a good pickup the first couple of months, guys. Since then, for the vast majority of it, it has been misery in almost every way. And it's fine to say that for the last couple of weeks into the playoffs, you go with the objectively better player after you stuck with this guy and gave him every possible opportunity up until just the last couple of weeks of the season. It's okay to do it. I don't understand why we just can't. A couple of weeks after saying, oh, he gives us the best chance to win, after it's proven to you that he doesn't, why can't you ever pivot? Why can't the New York Yankees ever deviate from their current course in real time and adjust as they go? It's almost like whenever they have a plan, nothing's going to change it. Got to stick to the plan. Sometimes things happen in real time that require plans changing. That's a part of life, not only just baseball or sports in general. That is a fact of life. So if weeks continue to go by and there are no valid reasons to keep Jason Dominguez held back, then pivot already, for the love of God. How much longer do we have to watch this guy penciled in? He's in the 9-hole now, for crying out loud. Jason could be a real nice addition to this lineup. Like I said, I'll just put one together on the fly. Yeah, Glaber, Soto, Judge, Wells, Stanton, then you could put Dominguez after him, or you could put Dominguez before him. Doesn't really make a difference to me, especially because he's a switch hitter anyway. Then you could have Jazz, Rizzo, Volpe. Boom! Sit Verdugo, another liability in an already struggling lineup. Hitting has been the downfall of the Yankees for the last couple of years now. Please don't let it be the ultimate downfall of this year as well. Please, I beg of the Yankees and everyone else who is involved, even remotely, in the decision-making in the front office. Please don't let it happen again when you have a potential better option staring you right in the noggin. He's right there, batting in the upper 300s in AAA. And the kid's handling it as graciously as somebody possibly could. Saying that, oh, it's out of my control. I'm here to do my job, and I'll continue to do it. And I appreciate him for that. Even shows his maturity at such a young age, which makes me like him even friggin' more. I never would have believed you if you told me after 2023, with the very brief appearances we saw of Jason Dominguez and the potential that we all saw, I never would have believed you if you told me that after that, when he returns from injury, you're going to find yourself on September 8th with Dominguez only having had one major league game in 2024. I know a large chunk of that is to be put towards the injuries for keeping him out all that time. I know. But especially in a point in time like right now and the better part of the last week where there is no justification for holding him back any longer, he is still not here. The only time we have seen him was in a Little League Classic in Pennsylvania. They may still have the best record in the American League. I give them credit for that. I also attribute it partially to the fact that other than the Dodgers, who were sprouting, I would say towards winning 95 plus, other than that, there's really no outlier, significant outlier. Not even the Dodgers, because the Yankees are even, maybe 2-3 games behind them even. But no real outlier this year as far as a team that's really just running away with everything and to win 100-plus games. There's nobody else like that. The league is pretty meh this year, so I contributed a little bit to that this year. But I also give the Yankees their credit where credit is due. They still have the best record in the American League. So you can't accuse me of being completely negative or pessimistic or unreasonable, because I fairly and effortlessly say that and try to put that out there and remind people that the Yankees are still in a very good position for the one they're in. But in the same breath, it could also be true that amidst all of that, things could be even better with the addition of someone even better than the one they're so hell-bent on sticking with, and in that same thought, appear to be unserious. Because it is one of the single biggest decisions that they face in recent history, with the team being as close as they are to potentially doing something incredible. And with Jason's help, could become that much closer to becoming a reality. And yet they just continue to stick to their nonsensical plan. Because they have convinced themselves that someone who is a below average hitter at this point for the better part of the last, 70 to 80 games this year, which is no small sample size, is a better option than a 21-year-old phenom playing his heart out at a level where he no longer belongs at this point in time. And the Yankees have to be called out for such an outrageous mindset and thereby decision at this point in time, where no valid reasons remain to stay on this current course. Again, discussion could be moot come tomorrow, especially because of this fact that there is legitimately nothing mathematical standing in their way anymore as far as rookie eligibility. Nothing with 19 games remaining, even if you bump it up to 5 at-bats per game. No excuses remain. So maybe they do make the move tomorrow when they return home to face Kansas City. Maybe they do. Or maybe they don't. And they stay the Yankees, who just stay on course and usually do not admit when they're wrong. I see through their nonsense whenever they happen to spew it. All I ask is that you see through it too. And if I could help you to see through it, well, that's what I'm here for. Amidst celebrating the positives of the Yankees, of course, as well, but also to help you see through the crap, in case you don't already. And if absolutely anybody else out there can shed some light on any other BS as to why this move may not be being made by the Yankees as of yet, then please, I encourage you, hit me up on social media, comment on any platform you may be listening to the show on right now, and let me know your thoughts on why they could be doing this, but they have to be valid, based on reality. Because rookie eligibility is no longer a valid excuse. So come up with something else and let me know. And if you're going to have me read your message or your reply, wherever it may be, it had better be a more well thought out, unique, astute point than Alex Verdugo sometimes hits singles, and in a 9-game span could maybe have him have like a 280 average. Because at that point in time, your comment and your thoughts are being completely dismissed. Because that holds no value at this point anymore. It does not. So please, if you are smarter, wiser than me, help me to see the light. Otherwise, I will continue to help you to not fall for the utter nonsense anymore. So that's all I ask of the Yankees. Enough of the self-sabotage. Because it is not helping you, in your quest to take advantage of certain days like today, in your quest to ultimately win first place and hopefully thereby the best record in the American League. And since we are another week in, and the entire Yankee fan base is rightfully outraged by Dominguez not being here yet and taking over for Verdugo, who should be benched by now, I am one of those people. And you saw the Yankees drop another disgraceful series earlier in the week. And while they did win this series against the Cubs this weekend, not finishing a sweep and taking advantage of an unexpected Orioles loss today, well, these things continue to pop into people's minds the more time that goes by with Dominguez not being here. And I always love how they leave that possibility open-ended. They say, oh, well, in the coming weeks, we can always change our minds. So then they'll say, oh, well, we changed our minds. We were honest. No. You could have done it and should have done it earlier on. Don't use that word salad to validate the crap that you spew to the public. You should have called him up days ago, and you could have played him every day without there being an issue, especially now. So we're over an hour in now. Oh my gosh. I think I've said everything I had to say. I mean, a lot of it was already said last week, but it had to be reiterated and driven home even further now that another week has passed and Dominguez is still not here. But at the risk of beating a dead horse with this particular topic and being over an hour into today's episode already, doing an overall evaluation of the offense and discussing the Yankees' bull crap, I guess we can move on to weekly recap now because since we're talking about all that with the games and whatnot and people's performances, might as well go back to doing recap right after the open of the show that lasted over an hour. But, I mean, that was really the overall consensus of the offense, and the starting pitching, with the exception of Wednesday, with Stroman, had a very good week, and the bullpen, with the exception of the end of the Texas series, also had a pretty solid week as well. So what do you say we expand on the details of what happened in this past week and what was a very unfortunate Rangers series ultimately, and a good Cubs weekend, with the exception of a quiet offense and a bitter end to it on a day where they really could have taken advantage of the AL East race. But now that 143 games have been completed in 2024, which is very hard to believe, I know, let us hop into that Yapping Yankees time machine back to Monday the 2nd, where game number 138 was played, and let us catch up to game 143 today. Yapping Yankees time machine, let's go. So we start with Game 1 in Texas, the only good game in this series, in fact. And when I mentioned right before this about starting pitching being good this past week, well, this was the start of it by none other than Mr. Cole, the birthday boy we were talking about earlier for today. Well, he started off the week as far as starting pitching, and he started it off on a good note. 6 innings, 1 run, 1 walk, only 4 hits allowed, and striking out 9. And he would have started the 7th inning, but he actually left the game with a little bit of a leg cramp, and thankfully it was revealed to be a cramp later on and nothing worse, because if it was, then I would have hosted a live event with the rest of my fellow Yankee fans where we all just simultaneously swan dive off the roof of my house and make sure we land on our necks, because that would have been devastating if it was anything other than just a cramp. But fortunately, that's all it was. But nonetheless, despite having to leave during his 7th inning warm-up, still a fantastic start by Garrett Cole. After him, the bullpen made it a little weird because Luke Weaver allowed a couple of runs on a huge 2-run shot. And then after a base runner that was Tim Hill's responsibility came home to score, Clay Holmes was on the mound at the time, and to get the final 2 outs was certainly an adventure, and only done because Gleyber Torres made a very nice play up the middle defensively. Otherwise, we would be having a very different discussion right now than the one that would take place the very next night, thanks to Mr. Clay Holmes. But anyway, thanks to Gleyber Torres making that nice defensive play, saved Clay Holmes from potential disaster for possibly blowing a game that was well out of reach, or at least should have been for the Rangers. But fortunately, the Yankees also did score 8 runs. That also helps things, too. It tends to. Top of the 3rd, Gleyber drove in 2 on a 2-run double. And then after the Rangers got on the board, Aaron Judge got an RBI double to make it 3-1, followed by a Jazz Chisholm RBI single. Made it 4-1, and then a 2-run ground rule double by Anthony Rizzo, making it 6-1. And a wild pitch by Chase Anderson, allowing Chisholm to come home to score, make it 7-1, with Giancarlo's 25th home run in the top of the 8th, a solo shot making it 8-3 at the time, with the final after another potential heart attack at the hands of Cardiac Clay, or Heart Attack Holmes, whichever one you prefer. The Yankees' final score on Monday was 8-4, grabbing the victory, thankfully, after what was a horrible weekend against St. Louis, so bouncing back. But in typical Yankee fashion, like we were talking about last week, you win one, and then it's time for the steps back. And the Yankees took a huge one on Tuesday in a game that was otherwise turning out to be pretty solid, despite the fact that it was very quiet for the first chunk of it. Carlos Rodon went 6 innings and only allowing 1 run and 1 hit. It was just a solo shot at the hands of Josh Young in the bottom of the 4th. If not for that solo shot, Rodon was legit untouched. He did allow 2 walks otherwise, but that home run was his only hit he even gave up, while striking out 11 batters in 6 innings. So despite the solo shot, wonderful start by Carlos Rodon. He was just terrific. Canely after him allowed a run, although it was unearned, thanks to DJ LeMahieu, who was, for some reason, still playing in this game in the 8th inning, let alone playing in any game at all at this point. Despite Rizzo still, I think it's valid to say that he should have been subbed in defensively at this point when it's coming to the end of the game, because just the smarter thing to do. It's not like DJ is a first baseman primarily, and it's not like he's going to provide anything for you offensively. Not much important, at least. So, the Yankees kind of paid for it here. LeMahieu dropping a ball was a soft toss by Canely when he was trying to make a play on it. And they say DJ lost the ball in the lights, even though the ball was like chest level, and it was just a simple toss over to first. So I'm not understanding how he could have lost it in the lights. I'm just a little confused about that. But either way, a run was charged to Canely because of that, an unearned one at that. And Cousins, who came in after him, just made a little bit of a mess of things. But Tim Hill came in to save the day nonetheless. So the Yankees still had a lead at that point, mainly thanks to the fact that Trevino drove in a run with a ground out. Alex Verdugo, I know, very rare here, got an RBI single, completely unexpected big hit in a big spot there, making it 2-1. And then Volpe drove in 2 with a 2-run single. So those were the 4 runs for the Yankees, and they headed to the bottom of the 9th with a 4-3 lead. Clay Holmes comes in, and for the 11th time, 1 time short of a clean dozen, this man comes in, he allows 2 hits, he walks 2 guys, and then just when you thought that, hey, even if you felt like he was going to blow the game, and I did, right when I saw him walking 2 guys and I saw a few pitches in that he was spiking almost everything into the dirt. He had no sinker whatsoever, which then allows him, or rather makes him, over-rely on his breaking stuff, and that can be hung plenty of times, which it often is. And if that's not working either, then Clay Holmes looks like a lost child in the middle of a playground, not able to find his parents for the better part of about an hour. That is what he looks like when he has nothing out there, like a deer in the headlights. And that's the look that we got for this outing, as we have seen on plenty other occasions. All the while, he threw more balls than strikes in the inning, and just sinker after sinker was spiked straight into the dirt. Ultimately, just when you thought, maybe it'll just be a blown save. No. It was a knockout punch of knockout punches. Wyatt Langford, who along with Josh Young, just about the only 2 main guys who just owned the Yankees in these last 2 games of this series. Wyatt Langford hits a grand slam, a tank job, deep into the left field Texas night, and Clay Holmes gets a spectacular, surreal blown save on top of all the others. Yankees lose a disgraceful game 7-4 to yet another crap team. So yet another inexcusable loss to a bad team, which was a major topic of discussion on last week's episode. Let alone even more discussion and anger, just pure vitriol, very understandably so, throughout the Yankee fan base. Continued dialogue about how Clay Holmes just cannot close games for the Yankees anymore. I personally do not have much more to say beyond what I've already said a million times about the guy. I have said a million times the guy cannot close games. I'm not saying he can't pitch, because he has proven in the past to be a very effective back end of the bullpen guy in other innings, but the guy cannot close. He can't close. And it was that much more magnified after something as atrocious as this, and he should never see another closing appearance as long as he lives for the Yankees. This has to be done. Has to be done. Should have been done months ago, but now it's got to be done. Never let Clay Holmes see another ninth inning where the Yankees have a lead within 3 runs. Ever again. So lots of anger over all of that. And it would continue into Wednesday, after having to hear from Boone and Clay Holmes that, on an overall basis, they thought he'd been throwing the ball pretty well. It's funny. So then after that, Wednesday came around, and this was the only bad example of starting pitching throughout this entire week. Marcus Stroman took the hill, and he was just a disaster. 3 2/3, 9 hits, 5 runs, 1 walk, only striking out 3. The guy had nothing. And by the 4th inning, the Yankees, especially with the way they were looking offensively, were just looking dead and buried. They only put up 2 runs in the top of the 5th inning, thanks to a 2-run shot by Juan Soto, the opposite way to left field. His 38th home run of the year as he continues to close in on 40 for the first time in his career. But otherwise, with Stroman combined with Meza and Marinaccio, Meza allowing 3 and only recording an out, and Marinaccio allowing 2 more, it was just a disaster. The final score was 10-6. It was about to be 10-2 until what I mentioned before earlier in the show happened. Trent Grisham hitting a grand slam for 4 more runs in the 9th inning, and then having 2 more runners on base with Stanton at the plate, having me think there's no shot, right? No, there was no shot, because Stanton did rope one to left field, but then a beautiful, beautiful catch was made in left field by Wyatt Langford just to drive that last gut punch home at the hands of him to the Yankees, which he was just great in this series against them. But makes a phenomenal catch at a laser that was no doubt destined to just sneak right over the left field wall for Stanton to make it a 1-run game at 10-9 after the Yankees came into the 9th inning down 10-2. But it wasn't meant to be, and Trent's grand slam was an interesting addition to the 9th inning there in what was a 10-6 loss to seal another disgraceful series loss in Texas to another bad team. It was just beside myself. Thankfully, the Yankees were off on Thursday. Then they traveled to Chicago to start a 3-game weekend set. Starting this game was Luis Gil with his return from the injured list like we were talking about last week. We were expecting to see that at some point very soon, and it did happen at the end of this past week, and he was fantastic. Because with all the discussion, especially earlier on in the week, with what the Yankees were to do with the closing position, because Clay Holmes is just inexcusable. He has been for months, but the Yankees, at this point only, have finally decided to start potentially exploring other options. Now, people were talking about what the Yankees could do for closing. And there are a lot of people saying, oh, well, who's going to do it? My immediate ideas were Tommy Kahnle, who for the most part for months now has looked fantastic. Or if you're not going to put Luis Gil back in the rotation, even try him, because imagine what a guy with electric stuff like that could do in just 1 inning. But they decided to put him back in the rotation, which I'm fine with. It's, give it one last shot at least in the home stretch here. And he was absolutely terrific. 6 innings, shutout, only 2 walks, and 1 hit the whole night. Or day, I should say. There was a day game on Friday afternoon, strangely enough. And striking out 7. So Luis Gil in his IL return, fantastic. Absolutely terrific job by Gil on Friday, advancing to a 13-6 record with an ERA back down to 3.24. Phenomenal. Jake Cousins, Tommy Kahnle, and Luke Weaver would bring it home after that. Luke earning his first save of the year. Congratulations to him. Refreshing to see anybody whatsoever in that role. I would have considered Weaver in my mind as well, but he's been a little bit questionable of late for about the last month or so. He's allowed some big runs in some big spots, so I was a little hesitant towards him. Much more open to Kahnle, but Either one, it's whatever. Canley has just found himself in a very nice role in the back end of that bullpen overall, so I'm okay with it. Weaver still did a fine job. He did walk somebody, but struck out two and made quick work of it. And the Yankees really limited a well-hitting Cubs team coming into this series like it was established. And the Cubs really did only score 2 runs in this entire series because the next day they'd be shut out again. And in today's game, they scored 2 more only because of what was ultimately allowed after a Gleyber Torres first inning error in today's game. So the Yankees pitching, like I said, really a phenomenal job. It would continue yesterday with Clark Schmidt returning from the injured list, another guy that I was saying on last week's episode that we should expect to see back within the next week to a week and a half from the last time we spoke, and that's exactly what happened. Came back just yesterday, just about a week since the last time we spoke, and Clark Schmidt, great to see him back. I was excited to see him on that mound, and my excitement was warranted because he looked awesome. He did only go 4 2/3, but I was expecting his pitch count to be limited since it's just his first start back in the big league since late May. So you're talking about the better part of 3+ months here, missing that much time. So of course he's going to be limited. But in that time, 4 hits, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, no runs, just an out short of 5 innings. So solid outing for Clark. And in the unfortunately few amount of outings he has this year, thanks to that lat strain, his ERA was brought down to 2.34, capitalizing on what was already forming to be a great season before he got hurt. So it's just awesome to see Clark back. And the Yankees did try a piggybacking with Nestor Cortez in this one, and it just turned out wonderfully. Because Nestor, after that, finished off the game with the final 4 1/3 innings pitched shutout, 1 walk just like Clark, but an extra strikeout with 3 Ks. So Clark got himself 14 outs, and Nestor got the remaining 13. That's it. The entire bullpen outside of that didn't even have to be used. I considered that a huge win. That's pretty freaking awesome. So Nestor did express some displeasure over being the one to piggyback in the bullpen because he said he considered himself to be a bit of a workhorse for a stretch there. And at a time, he might have been right. There was a time where he put together a few consecutive good starts, but overall, throughout the vast majority of 2024, Nestor has been very inconsistent. That's just a fact. He had a stretch in the recent past where, again, 3-4 good starts in a row. Very good. I can even refer back to those right now if anybody would like. In August, on the 13th, he went 7 shutout innings. On the 21st, he went 7 shutout innings. And then on the 26th, and we spoke about all these starts individually when they happened during recaps of those times, 6 2/3, just 1 run. But then on September 1st, he went back out there again and then showed shades of his older self throughout the vast majority of the season, where he went 4 innings, only 4 innings, and allowed 5 runs and 9 hits. So you've seen a lot of that inconsistency throughout most of the year. You see him go 6 innings, 1 run, and then he'll go 4 1/3, for instance, and allow 5 or 6. And you just see that dynamic continue throughout most of his season. A lot of inconsistency here and there, just not going deep into games. So while he's been around for the entire year and he's maintained health and he's been there, so he's been a workhorse in that sense, I guess. But as far as overall performance and being reliable, outside of those 3 consecutive starts in August, not really. I'm just trying to be nice about it. I mean, the rest of that quote, some people really jumped on him for the beginning of that quote, but then he went on to say that he would just go on and do his job, whatever is required of him, he'll do. And that's the good part of the quote. Some people kind of jumped on him a little bit early. But I would disagree with him when he said that he's been like the massive workhorse. I do agree that this rotation has gone through a lot of difficulty in certain months, but at a lot of times, due to his inconsistency, that was Nestor contributing to that. So I do have to say that. Just with full disclosure and in the interest of fairness, as I always say. So in that part of his quote, I do have to urge Nestor to cool it a little bit. But the rest of the quote was fine. I didn't jump to conclusions like some others did. And in this outing, piggybacking off of Clark, it was fantastic. So he did his job, like he said he would. And it was an awesome outing. They shut the Cubs down completely. 4 hits on the whole day against the both of them combined. And all of that was actually Clark. Nestor didn't even allow any hits. He only allowed a base runner on a walk. That's it. So Nestor was really, really good. So I got to give him that. And because of that, the offense really didn't have to do much. They did just enough to get the win. They scored a run on a Wells ground out in the top of the first, so they took an early lead because of that. And then in the top of the sixth, on a double steal, Christian Betancourt threw a ball down the line, which allowed Judge to come home to score after the double steal attempt. That made it 2-0, and that was it. So the Yankees, again, just like the night prior, or the day prior, rather, didn't have to really do much of anything because the Cubs were just rendered completely silent by Yankee pitching. Today, they tried to get away with that, like I said earlier, but it wasn't really the case because Gleyber made his error in the first inning, which ultimately resulted in 2 runs scoring off of Cole on his birthday. But that was the only 2 runs that came home, and they were unearned thanks to that Gleyber error, because it should have been the final out of the inning if the play was made. But it wasn't. And because of that, Cole had 2 unearned runs on his final line. I did give it before, but I'll give it again. 6 innings of just 3 hits, 2 runs, both unearned. So in the earned runs department, 6 shutout innings, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. So a terrific outing by the birthday boy. Jake Cousins and Clay Holmes pitched after him. Each had shutout innings. But other than that, the Yankee offense, despite having their scoring chances here and there and having double the hits the Cubs did on the afternoon, they just couldn't capitalize on much of anything. The second inning could have gone way differently if Anthony Volpe's line drive sac fly to left field was anything different than a sac fly and a nice catch by Ian Happ out there, who I did want on the Yankees some time ago, but nonetheless did make a very nice catch out there, aside from the nice catch he would also make later in the game off of Wells' hard hit to left that made him crash into the ivy and thereby the brick wall behind it. But if this ball gets by Happ, or just maybe drops a little bit sooner and ends up becoming a hit, the second inning could have been way more capitalized upon. But it was a sac fly the Yankees couldn't add on in this inning or any other, and it was a very lifeless 2-1 loss to end the series. Again, glad they won the series, 2 out of 3, but they could have swept and have taken advantage of the Orioles losing again today to the Rays, so that stinks. But otherwise, guys, we are fully caught up, and the Yankees wrapped up what was a 3-3 road trip, which definitely should have been at least a winning record of 4-2 at the very least, because they should not have lost 2 out of 3 to the Rangers. Definitely freaking not. But otherwise, another week come and gone as the end of the 2024 season continues to get closer and closer. It's absolutely crazy. Crazy. Really would have been nice to sweep, guys. Would have been a 3-game win streak, come home feeling good, but whatever. Speaking of coming home, what is ahead for this next upcoming week? The Yankees come right home to get back to action tomorrow night. The Kansas City Royals are coming to town. One of the very few remaining legitimately threatening matchups, I would say, going forward for the remaining schedule for the Yankees outside of the Orioles upcoming in a couple of weeks. But other than that, the Kansas City Royals are coming to town for the next 3 days, starting tomorrow on Monday the 9th, 7:05 p.m. Eastern on the Yes Network. Will be for tomorrow. Carlos Rodon will be taking the hill for the Yankees. We'll see if he could capitalize after his Texas start, stay on a good track. Tuesday will also be at 7:05 p.m. Eastern. Starting that game will be Marcus Stroman. Let's see if he could bounce back from his disastrous Texas start. And on Wednesday, it'll be back on Amazon Prime for the Yankees as far as broadcasting. It'll be 7:05 p.m. once again for that game. Luis Gil will be on the hill once again for that one. No off day Thursday this week. The Yankees are playing straight through. No off days this week for the first time in a while, I feel like. The Yankees have had a lot of off days because of what was their harsh first half schedule. Thursday, the Red Sox come back to town. This will be the last time the two teams see each other in 2024. This will be for a 4-game weekend set at the stadium. Thursday will be a 7:15 p.m. start time at Yankee Stadium on Fox, just so everybody knows. It will not be on Yes. No pitching matchups have been announced for this series as of yet. Thursday will be 7:15 p.m. Eastern. Friday will be at 7:05 p.m. Eastern. This game will be on Apple TV, just so everybody knows, so I probably will not be able to watch that. I'll just be listening on radio most likely. 7:05 p.m. Eastern, Apple TV. Saturday will be at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, finally back on the Yes Network. And Sunday, when we shall yap once again next week, that game, also on the Yes Network, will be at 1:35 p.m. Eastern before their next off day, which will be Monday the 16th. So that's all for the recap segment, guys. As far as Yankees news, not too unbelievably much to report on yet again officially, at least as of roster transactions. There are a few injury updates, some of which you even heard during the recap segment. But Monday, with Cole cramping up again, just some extra updates on that. That obviously ended up being a nothing burger because it was cramps. So nothing major. He ended up making his start today anyway, so all is well, and he still looked really good. Wells was hit in the pitch in the wrist and was sore as of the Texas series. Some people were very concerned about that and even baffled as to why he didn't get that one start over Trevino and wondering where he is. I guess some people just missed that Wells was hit in the wrist. I don't really know why, but he was sore, so I'd rather him not play if he's sore. But his x-rays were negative, and hey, he's been back of late anyway, so hopefully his recent iffy gameplay, despite running into some bad luck once again like he has been for a chunk of the year, hopefully his iffy gameplay at times in the last few days isn't as a result of that. I hope his wrist is okay. But as of now, he's back out there playing x-rays negative and still just keep giving the guys reps. The Yankees also did option Scott Effross back down to AAA in exchange for Luis Gil coming back on Thursday. Now, while I do understand Effross being a candidate to be optioned once again because in the short time that he was here, we really didn't see anything good, which I'm very disappointed about. I had a lot of anticipation, positive anticipation for his return because it's been about 2 full calendar years since he's been on a mound. And when the Yankees acquired him at the 2022 trade deadline, there was quite a bit of promise there as far as bullpen help, and he did look pretty solid in the few appearances he did have before getting hurt. So despite not being completely surprised by it because it has been a while, I am pretty disappointed by this, and I hope we see him at some point, whether it be before the end of the season or next year once again in spring training or something, and we see some strides forward for him because I expected more. I know it's been a while, but he was spending a lot of time down there ramping up as well, even after his rehab assignment ended. I just expected a little bit more out of him. But maybe we'll see him again. Who knows? I do think that there were more candidates to be optioned or even DFA'd. I know you always go for the option before the DFAing because you could possibly lose the player if you DFA. I understand that. But I think there are a lot of other options out in the bullpen that you could have gotten rid of without it being Effross. But at least another one of those candidates that should have gotten the boot, well, at least they did, as of just yesterday amidst some more roster moves, with Clark Schmidt officially coming off of the 60-day injured list. The same with Ian Hamilton. We have been mentioning him for weeks. We mentioned his minor setback last week, but the Yankees thought it wasn't a big deal, and evidently it must not have been because he is officially back now, which is awesome. So additional bullpen reinforcements, with Clark Schmidt being additional starting pitching reinforcements. We know he looked terrific. He and Hamilton are both officially back. And in turn, the Yankees DFA'd Phil Bickford. That's the candidate I was talking about. That very well could have been just booted out of the bullpen otherwise. But Phil Bickford was DFA'd. And so was Nick Burdi, who we know that alongside Effross, we know that he was ramping up after his rehab assignment ended for a long time in AAA, but we never saw him called back up, and now he's been DFA'd. So I wonder if the Yankees just really didn't like what they were seeing from him when he was ramping back up and they just lost hope in him. I guess that's got to be the reason, if they're willing to DFA him. They did have to make a couple of moves for the 40-man because both Hamilton and Schmidt were coming off the 60-day. But I guess when it comes to DFAing Nick Burdi, when you could have DFA'd also maybe, I don't know, Tim Meza, another option there, just saying. Like I said, there are plenty of other candidates, Bickford included, but he's bitten the dust once again. Second DFAing by the Yankees with him. But I thought there were other options that could have gone before someone like Burdi. I guess they just really didn't like what they were seeing from him. So Burdi and Bickford DFA'd, Schmidt and Hamilton back. A couple of more long-term injuries returned from the injured list. As far as anybody else, when it comes to updated injury news, the not so many that there are remaining because we have seen quite a bit of returns of late. But you also have John Burdi. A lot of people are talking about him as more potential infield versatility. He's been out for months because of his calf difficulties, but the Yankees are saying that he could possibly be reactivated tomorrow on the 9th when the Yankees return home against the Royals. But I mean, I don't really care too much for Burdi. I mean, if he could come back in a versatile role and add anything, fine, I guess. But with Jazz here, manning third base, and the Yankees seem pretty determined to have that, and I don't want to take at-bats away from Jazz because Jazz has been awesome at the plate on an overall basis since becoming a Yankee. So I definitely don't want to sacrifice Jazz at-bats for Birdie, even if it is for matchups against left-handed pitchers. I just don't care enough about that. You put Jazz out there. For the most part, as a Yankee, has been fantastic at the plate. But I could see them doing something like that, platooning them at third base with their nonsense. I don't want that. I just don't care enough for Birdie. I mean, in his minor league rehab games since August 24th, in his games for Double-A, he was batting .211, and in his games in Triple-A, he's batting .529, 9 for 17. I mean, if he could add stuff, then fine, but I don't really see any place that he could fit in other than platooning with Jazz Chisholm, which I don't want from an offensive perspective, because I feel like Jazz is going to give you more than John Birdie, especially even from a speed and even base running perspective. I don't know. Not too comfortable with that, but we'll see what they do roster-wise. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something as dumb as optioning Oswaldo again, which is probably what they're going to do. I could be totally wrong. We'll see. But Oswaldo's been morbidly mistreated as it is for the last couple of months, given how he's actually done when given opportunities. He's been pretty solid. So we'll see what they do transaction-wise once Birdie's reactivated, but expect to see him back tomorrow. Actually, you know what? Scratch that with optioning Oswaldo, because that actually wouldn't be enough. They would actually have to make a 40-man move, because I forgot this guy was actually on the 60-day injured list since June 12th. So they would actually have to possibly even DFA somebody. So that would be interesting. So an optioning of Oswaldo would not be enough. That would not open up a 40-man spot. So if they actually care about using Birdie at all, then they're going to have to make a 40-man move. So yeah, we'll see what they do transactions-wise tomorrow. That should be interesting. But Birdie, expecting to be reactivated tomorrow. As far as pitching, because that's basically the last piece of news as far as legitimately anybody, because the rest are out until 2025, as we know. Johnny Lowe, unfortunately. God, the bullpen could use him. Pereira, as far as an offensive perspective, and I don't see Brubaker coming back, nor do I really care about that. The only two others really worth reporting on, or that they're even really left to report on, are Cody Poteet and Lou Trevino for possibly even more bullpen help. But he's been out just about as long as Efros was, so I only hope that we see some potentially better things out of him. Have to make another 40-man move for him. He's been out forever. But he had his minor league rehab assignment transferred to AAA back on August 29th. I believe we mentioned that. But he's looked pretty good. So that's an encouraging sign, but he continues to continue in his rehab assignment. Maybe we'll see him at some point. Who knows? Could potentially be some additional bullpen help. And Cody Poteet, lastly, a potential depth piece late in the season, as Brian Cashman has said. He's continuing his rehab assignment as well. So there's really nothing else to report as of that. Nothing new to report, just continuing rehab. And if the Yankees need him, I'm pretty sure they'll call him up at just whatever point, because I think he's just about ready to go at this point. I mean, he's already throwing about 3 innings at this point in his rehab assignment, so you just maybe beef him up a little bit more and he can make a spot start if need be, or maybe even piggyback off somebody in the bullpen after a shorter start. Maybe you could pair him and Schmidt together instead of Nestor, or I don't know what they plan on doing. But if they ever need a backup starter, especially in the event that somebody else gets hurt before the season ends, hopefully not, then Poteet could be there, but he's just continuing his rehab. So overall, expect to see Birdie tomorrow. Poteet and Trevino continue to rehab, and everybody else is pretty much done until next year. So that is your overall injury update, as well as any roster transactions that took place this past week officially, my friends. So that's where the roster's at. That's where injuries are at. So let's end off with the social media segment for today. I have another open-ended question for you, and it mainly surrounds the main topic for today that I spent a chunk of the open bitching about. So what say you we hear some thoughts from yourselves out there? The open-ended question for this week is, do you think the Yanks will even call Dominguez up at all before the season ends at this point? And if so, when? Honestly, I think it happens within the next week, but I am not putting all my eggs in one basket on that and saying for sure. I cannot hold my breath when it comes to the Yankees doing the objective right thing, especially with something as obvious as this. They have the tendency in the recent past to just drop the ball on obvious decisions like this for reasons that nobody can explain. So there's a very good chance that he's just never called up, and they'll die on the hill that, oh, we just want him starting fresh in 25. And if they do that, the Yankees deserve any and all criticism they receive from that point forward. It would objectively be the wrong thing to do. So if he is called up, I'll say that it happens definitely by the next time we talk. If it's not by the next time we talk, I do not think it's going to be happening at all. I'll say that that's my overall opinion. I'll give it another week, especially because legitimately heading into tomorrow, there is no valid excuse mathematically or wise, as we well established earlier on in the show, to still hold him back in AAA. There simply is none. So I'll give it until next week, let alone the fact that it should happen tomorrow. But I'll give it till next week. If it's not, then he's cooked until 25, and so are the Yankees. Let's hear what some of you have to say. First up, we'll start with @RMNY1976 saying no, and they are a-holes for not doing it. All right, I can say that. I can say a-holes because I'm not saying the actual word. Yeah, I agree with you. What else can I say? I mean, I don't fully agree that they won't do it. I'm giving them another week. If they don't call him up by the 15th, next Sunday when we talk again, then I'll agree with you. But I certainly don't blame you for saying no, because I, too, am not holding my breath by any stretch of the imagination. So I definitely agree with what they are for not doing it. Completely agree. @JoeBlow05919516 says, not an issue if we are winning. Well, if they're winning, it's good, yeah. But they haven't been winning consistently for quite some time now. And the massive problem is the offense. Definitely as of the last couple of weeks, more so than not. 2 weeks ago, a lot of it was the pitching, I'll give it that. But especially this past week, and a lot of the times you see when they get majorly inconsistent, the offense has been having a tough time. And the big two, if you want to add Stanton in there, then the big three have been struggling mightily, especially Judge and Stanton. And the lineup tends to follow them, as we established. And if you can add something like Dominguez into that mix to provide the contributions that he could very well provide and give that spark, when there's no reason to not do it, you do it. Especially in the season where it's guaranteed that you have Judge doing what he has done for the vast majority of the season. You have Soto here, and you have Garrett Cole back, looking more and more like himself with each passing start. It's just what you do. So it may not be a huge issue if they're winning, but it's still something that you should do. And even if you are winning, why not make it even better by putting an even better foot forward? Why not? @BWelch1943 says, when Cashman realizes the offense needs an injection, Dominguez will be summoned. That should be soon. From your lips to God's ears. Regardless of the offense, but especially because of the way they've been looking, yes, agreed. @Big_Puma1363 742. You guys got to cool with the numbers in your handles, guys. Fix that up, clean it up, shorten it up. They say he's built-in consolation prize for next year. When Hal says, nope, I'm not going there for Juan Soto. They will sell the fan base on an eventual outfield of Dominguez, Spencer Jones, and Judge. Watch, you'll see. If the Yanks cared what their fans thought at all, he'd be up. Well, yeah, they certainly don't care what the fans think, that's for sure. And this proves that. Maybe in some cases in the past, they might have cared a bit. But especially right now, it's something as blatant as this, that they are just continuing to want to die on this hill. Yeah, it's disgustingly obvious that particularly in this case, especially, they could not care less. But yeah, I certainly hope that's not the plan. It certainly could be. But I don't think Spencer Jones is completely ready yet. And you wouldn't be able to sell anybody on that. No matter how good Dominguez is, he's still a phenom that needs more experience up here and cannot be compared to someone who has achieved what Juan Soto has. So this Yankee fan right here in me will not be sold on that. Maybe some others will be. I'll be happy that he's up, but I won't be sold on the fact that, oh yeah, solid replacement for Soto. Get the hell out of here. And it's not a reason to hold him down right now. Yeah, it could very well happen, but that is just nightmare fuel, and I pray it doesn't happen. At Laura_Icemunt, my buddy Laura. Laura says, as much as I want to say they will call him up, I don't think that will be the case. There's too many factors in play. Wanted to keep his rookie status for 25, too many outfielders on the 40-man roster. It's not feasible. Yes, it is. I'm not sure if you're saying what the Yankees are thinking or what you're thinking, but if it's what the Yankees are thinking, well, they're wrong. Don't fall for that. Too many outfielders? Well, you get rid of Duke Ellis at that point. There's no more need for him. That could be a 40-man roster move that you could pursue because he'd be DFA'd. So, I mean, it's really just not that hard of a solution. And the rookie status, when it comes to the amount of at-bats eligible, I've already well established that that is not an excuse anymore. So it's plenty feasible, and it can be done. But if you're saying just what the Yankees are thinking, then yeah, I agree. There's a very real possibility that he just does not get called up. Very real. At Rachel Chan 222 says, nope. A lot of people pessimistic. At Stanley72001 says, yes, thank you. Someone saying yes. Oh, thank God. Not that it has any ultimate say in what the Yankees do, but it's just good to see some optimism. I need to be uplifted a little bit in my soul. At JoeBoyNix29 says, no chance. They told us they aren't. Well, at least not right now, but they did mention them possibly changing their minds. I don't know. We'll see. At BillBrown35 says, no, it's unfortunate. Well, if it does end up being no, then unfortunate does not even scratch the surface, my friends. There are quite a few other words that I would choose. At Jose Chalice12 says, they should call him up now. Looks like Verdugo is starting to slow down yet again. It's time to find out if the future has become the present. If the end result is DFAing Verdugo before the playoffs, so be it. To Verdugo, thanks for nothing. You came here to hit 230. Well, I would say thanks for the first 2 months, because objectively he was very good in the first 2 months. Outside of that, yeah, not much to be thankful for otherwise. Really not much at all. But I totally agree otherwise. There's not much else to say with that. Completely agree. My good buddy Spencer at Musician DMD. I hope you're doing well in your recovery, my friend, your continued recovery. Thinking about you constantly as always, my friend. Spencer says, eventually Verdugo and his lacking play at the plate and in the field will force the Yankees to finally call up Dominguez. The Yankees have stalled because of their devotion to analytics, and the analytics short dictate to keep playing Verdugo despite his shortcomings. Yeah, well, the analytics are freaking wrong. I agree with that. But, yeah, I mean, if it starts to get so bad to the point, like, I mean, I think almost being doubled up on a routine fly ball to center field is just about as putrid as it gets. He's very lucky that that was overturned, and he was safe by about a centimeter. But it's just ridiculous. The continued lack of effort. Just getting a single or two every couple of days, if that. No slug whatsoever, providing nothing else offensively at all. The fielding being fine, but not good enough to make up for all the other shortcomings and for holding down someone like Dominguez. So yeah, hopefully, and you don't, again, this is where you get a little bit weird, because you don't want any Yankee player to actively be bad because that'll hurt the team. You don't want the team to be hurt. You want them to do well. You're rooting for them to succeed. But anything good that Verdugo does at the same time will only encourage the Yankees to continue to pursue this wrong path of playing him. So it's a weird place you're in. You know that having Dominguez up here is better, but you also don't want Verdugo to fail because he is the one up here right now. And if he does well, especially in key moments for the Yankees, and that benefits the Yankees, which is what you want because you root for the Yankees to win. So it just gets really hairy there. But that doesn't change the fact, regardless of if Verdugo goes 3 for 4 tomorrow with a big hit, that doesn't change the fact of who belongs up here in left field. It doesn't. Let's keep that in perspective. So, Otherwise, yes, Spencer, I agree. I can't really disagree with much of anything a lot of you have said. I thank you all for your replies. Let's finish off with the usual final two as always. First up is my girlfriend at Vic Salimo, and she says, I don't think so. I can't believe it, but the Yankees actually seem to be dedicated to sticking with Verdugo. Yeah, their words would indicate that much. I know a lot of the time their word only means so much, but yeah, irritatingly so, it does seem that way. And I hope that changes, but I don't blame you, Vic, like the others, for not really being confident in the Yankees doing the right thing. All right, last but certainly not least, as always, is my mom at Julia Gina Scudero, and she says, the answer to your question is yes, I think they will at the very last minute. I wish I knew why, when they're in a race for a pennant, why they wouldn't make it easier on everybody instead of torturing themselves and us with these ridiculous decisions. Alex Verdugo, really? Bench him. Cashman sucks, as your awesome listener has in his Twitter handle. That's right, he does. Kudos to him. Yep, that's a great Twitter handle. Now we have Judge even asleep for a little bit. How many things can this team handle going forward? Please, Yankees and front office, wake up. Self-sabotage, Mom, and the reason is because, well, why not? His job isn't in any danger or anything, so why would Cashman really care and do the blatantly right thing? It's because when your job isn't really ever in any danger and you're able to fall back on the fact that your team still has the best record in the American League, well, you can get away with things like this. You just can. That's the way that it is. That's not to say that you should actively wish for the Yankees to fail, because that's not what a fan does. But that is also why Cashman gets by doing and saying the things that he does and says. It's very aggravating. So yeah, that the guy on Twitter who has that handle, yeah, kudos to you, absolutely. But that's the reason why. If it's at the very last minute, then it'll be too late, because you just call him up suddenly and then the playoffs start and you expect him to majorly contribute on that big of a stage. I mean, who knows? Maybe he could. But that's not really a fair position to put a 21-year-old in. So you want to bring him up as soon as possible, give him a few weeks of experience, and allow him to get some time under his belt before such a massive time like the playoffs begins, while also allowing him to maintain his precious rookie eligibility for 2025. So that's why I would do it as soon as tomorrow. But I doubt the Yankees are going to do that, highly. So we'll see if it happens by next week, like I said, but otherwise, I don't know. I just don't know. But thank you, Mom, and thank you, Victoria, for your thoughts, as well as, again, everybody else for all of your replies. Anybody else who I did not get to, like I usually don't every week. There are usually plenty I don't, but if I didn't get to you, then just keep on giving it a shot every week, guys. I get to everybody eventually. I can only dodge you for so long, right? But I thank you regardless of whether I got to you or not. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for contributing this week, like so many of you always do such a great job at doing, especially because the episodes have been so consistently long of late, give or take about this time, maybe, give or take a few minutes, but especially if you make it here all the way to the end every week, you just, I cannot put into words how much I appreciate you. I really can't. It means the world. I'm really not that popular of a presence. I have just under 6,000 followers on Twitter and X. Not really anything major on other social medias. I'm around 1,000 on Instagram, which I don't primarily even use for sports. That's majorly personal as well. And Facebook, well, is Facebook, so not really anything major on there. And then my listenership on here with all platforms combined is probably about a couple of hundred. So nice little intimate family here, but nothing major, like on the scale of John Boy, for instance, nothing near that. So because of that, if you do listen to the entirety of these episodes, or even just give me a couple of minutes of your time, guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, really, just on a weekly basis. Even if I don't say it 24/7 all of the time, I do try to fit it in at least once per episode to remind you of how much I truly appreciate you and the time that you give me. So thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode and hearing this portion of it if you are, in fact, still listening. But otherwise, guys, that is all for episode 234 of Yapping Yankees today. A few of the usual reminders before we end here. Remember to follow me on all social medias if you do not already. Facebook fan page is Mike Scudero NY. Twitter or X is @Mike Scudero. And Instagram is Mike Scuds97. Subscribe to Yapping Yankees on all 4 of the platforms it is available on. That's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Like, subscribe, comment, do your thing wherever you listen to show your love for the show. And if you have any time, listen to the past Yapping Yankees episodes that you might have missed, if you have missed any. The last 200 episodes, we have officially reached the 200 episode milestone on YouTube as of today. Episodes 34 up to episode 234 today are all available on there on YouTube if you're not there already. And all of the other Yapping Yankees episodes from episode 1 all the way up to 234 today, those are all available on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. But once again, I thank you 3,000 for listening to me yap today. As always, my good friends, I have been your host, Mike Scudero, and we shall yap again next Sunday, September the 15th, when I come at you with episode 235 of Yapping Yankees. But until then, guys, a few of the other usual reminders that I give you at the end of each show. Hang in there, be patient, stay safe, look out for your loved ones. Go ahead and kick life's ass this week, as I'm sure you always at least try to do week in and week out, guys. That's what matters. Unless you're Master Yoda and there is no try, only do or do not. But otherwise, at least try to kick ass week in and week out. That's all I can ask of you. And Yanks, what can I say? How about trying to not self-sabotage? How about turning things around offensively, getting the big 2 especially back on track? How about taking advantage of days when the Orioles lose and you can take a bigger lead in the division for once? How about the idea of continuing to not do so crappy against crappy teams? How about getting on a bit of a, dare I say, win streak? Just a few things that we could work on improving after another week at best. Because now you actually have some decent competition heading into town, at least for the next few days, in the Kansas City Royals, who are only about 3 or so games, 3-4 games worse than you. As we were talking about last week, if the Yankees were to fall into the wild card picture, them and a couple of other teams could actually make things a little So maybe do what you have to do against them, and don't play down to Boston next weekend either. Let's try to pull that off. And in the meantime, my friends, you go ahead and have an awesome week. I will attempt to do the same, and we'll yap again next Sunday. Until then, take care, and let's go Yanks.